And from one crisis to another crisis, this is of a different kind. We're talking about Sri Lanka's economic crisis. Now, tourism has been the backbone of Sri Lanka's economy. It contributed to over 10% of the island nation's GDP, but COVID-19 pandemic has battered the industry. Restrictions led to record low travel to the country, and just when restrictions were easing, the exploding economic crisis has further hampered travel. Hotel and restaurant owners say they are struggling to repay loans as foreign tourists avoid travelling to the island nation. We tell you all in our next story.
Pristine beaches, tea plantations, ancient cities, and exotic wildlife. Sri Lanka is a traveller's paradise. Popular among both high-end globetrotters and budget travellers, tourism is at the heart of the country's economy. It accounts for over 10% of the country's GDP. It is the third largest source of foreign exchange, an important source of dollars for the government. But in the last 3 years, tourism here has taken a hit. First, there was the Easter bombings in 2019. Then the pandemic struck in 2020. And now the spiraling economic crisis.
I would definitely say this is the worst crisis since independence, just because while there have been crises, not to this magnitude and not to this level of disruption of the economy, the productive capacity of businesses to operate during power cuts and whatnot. It has impacts across the entire value chain.
This is Dilip Sandaravan. His guest house is a short walk from the beach in Marissa, but currently there are only a few reservations. Power cuts are making life difficult for this hostel owner. The tourists that are staying are also asking for discounts.
We are unable to serve our customers right now because of the power cut. The guests are not satisfied and they don't want to stay here.
Guests are complaining about air conditioning, hoteliers cannot access online booking platforms, and fuel shortages are making it harder to travel.
We find some problems because about the petrol. They don't have a lot of petrol, so maybe you have to wait a little bit to take a bus, to take a tuk-tuk, and it's a little bit more expensive.
Sri Lankan tourism has been plagued by setbacks before, but this is the industry's worst crisis since the civil war. Colombo is depending on tourism to revive its economy. Now, even a fully thriving tourism industry will not be enough, especially for Sri Lanka to claw itself out of this exploding crisis. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And for the latest on this, we are joined by WION correspondent Dasuni Athuda from Colombo. Good morning to you. First of all, I would like to know how the life of a common man has changed. What are the shortages a common man is facing, and what are the ways through which he is beating that?
Good morning, Sumit. Yes, in fact, Sri Lankans' lives are pretty much on survival mode, if I may say so, over the past few weeks, if not months. What started off as a mere 2-hour to 5-hour power cut has at certain times now extended to 10 plus hours of power cuts. But as of right now, we are only experiencing back again power cuts of up to, let's say, 5 plus hours. But still, these are considerable amounts of time where this country is out of power, where people like average citizens are unable to use electronic devices to stay connected, to run their errands and things like that. So the power crisis is one of the major issues. And then another issue that we have is the fact that we have severe shortages of fuel and gas that has led to lines exceeding kilometers in certain instances of people just wanting to purchase fuel for their vehicles or cooking gas. So those are the issues that we are facing right now. And like I said, the average citizen would usually wake up and then try to sort of schedule his or her life around power cuts. So it's not the most ideal of situations. And yes, these are unprecedented times for Sri Lanka, given that this is the country's worst economic crisis since independence.
And we also just saw a report on the tourism industry, which is one of the biggest contributors to GDP, and it has been destroyed by COVID-19 to a certain extent now. We spoke to people, you spoke to economists, why, when they are seeing this recovering, because that is the lifeline for people there.
Actually, yes. Sri Lanka has an additional year of a disadvantage rather when it comes to loss of tourism is in 2019, because exactly 3 years ago, in 2019, on the 21st of April, Sri Lanka had an April 21st terror attack, so popularly known as the Easter Sunday attack. So following that itself, Sri Lanka saw a massive loss in tourism income into the country. And then 2020, we had COVID, 2021, COVID again. And now, just when tourism is picking up, we are faced with an economic crisis. So when tourists come into the country, yes, there are minor disadvantages or inconveniences that they would face because of these fuel shortages, because of gas and power cuts, which is not the most ideal, but still this country does have so much to offer for our tourists.
Well, thank you, Dasani, for joining us this morning from Colombo on Sri Lanka's exploding economic crisis. Thank you very much. WION now available in your country. Download the app and get all the news on the move.